Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with you this evening and to help you induct these outstanding members of the golf community into the Hall of Fame. I was very pleased to see Adrian today. We share the alma mater, and of course he doesn't know me too well, but I've been idolizing him for a long, long time, and I want to thank him so much for his contributions to the world of golf. I want to thank the Ann Gregory family. I was reminded earlier this evening that some years ago, a long, long time ago, I went out to Las Vegas to play in the tournament in their honor. And I'll tell you how long ago that was. I was a single-digit handicapper back then. So it's been a long, long time ago. I want to thank those of you here whom I've known for a long, long time. Renee, Buck. I'm going to call you Buck. We got a love-hate relationship that goes back a long, long time. I want to thank others who are here, some of my fraternity brothers. Thank you so much for your assistance here this evening. On the ride from the airport, Mike asked me whether or not I was hungry. I told him that I wasn't. And then he said to me, he said, well, do you mind stopping by Rogers Park? Do you know Rogers Park? I said, yeah, I know a little bit about Rogers Park. He said, well, do you mind stopping by? I said, no, I don't mind at all. He says, you know, they've got some barbecue and collard greens. I said, well, I'll be glad for barbecue. You don't have to be hungry. Eat barbecue and collard greens. At least I don't have to be. And he said, well, I guess I asked the wrong question. And it reminded me of my favorite golf story that I first heard a long, long time ago. And some of you may have heard this story. I often tell it in trying to make a point in speeches. It seems that one day, a gentleman was playing on a course that he was not familiar with, and he came upon a hole with a significant amount of water between him and the green, and he asked his caddy, what do the members of this course play from this distance on this hole? A 6-iron? He said, yes, most of them do. So he pulled out a 6-iron and he hit it as good as he could hit it, and the ball landed in the water. He turned back to the caddy. He says, well, I thought you said that most of the members here play as a 6-iron from here. He said, yes, most of them do. He said, well, I just hit one of the best 6-irons I've ever hit in my life, and the ball fell in the water. He said, most of them do. So you learn from that story that you have to ask the right question. So I want to thank all of you for allowing me to be here with you this evening. Now, I have had a long love affair with golf. I can't explain to you why. One Christmas, my dad bought me a little wooden golf club and an absolutely hard rubber golf ball. And I started hitting. I'm this was preteen, little kid. And I sort of fell in love with that club. I didn't keep the ball too long. But not long after that, I started. We grew up across from a baseball field. And a few of us would go out, and the guys who were caddying, I was not allowed to caddy. The guys who would caddy would get old clubs, and they would bring them and balls that were cut pretty significantly, but if it didn't have but one cut on it, we figured that was a pretty good ball. And we would hit golf balls up and down that field. And I just decided that this is something that I would like to do. And of course, I played as much as I possibly could, though I was a grown man before I ever played on a regulation golf course. And I started playing consistently out of necessity. When I went to work for John West, the governor of South Carolina, our first Christmas, we were deciding how we would divide up the duties of the staff. We were all going to have this Christmas retreat. And they were going through all the things that the governor wanted to do at that retreat and assigning staff members to those duties. Then they got down to Saturday morning. They said, the governor wants to play golf on Saturday morning. And since none of us play golf, I don't know what to do. Well, I was the only African American on the staff. I'm sitting there and I said, well, I play golf. And there was silence in the room. And they looked at me and says, you play golf? I said, yeah, I play golf. They said, well, Saturday morning belonged to you. So I went to play golf with the governor that day, and that struck up a relationship. And of course, I was the only golfer on the staff, so I was the only staffer that got to hang out with the governor on the golf course. It was a tremendous tool. And when I went to Congress, I didn't know you were supposed to play golf in Congress. I went up there pretty serious about my work. And so one day, a member came up to me and says, we have golf outings up here on Mondays, and it's a good time to get to know the other members in a bipartisan way, because when we're on a golf course, you Democrats and Republicans, nobody is partisan. He said, I think it would be good if you learn how to play golf. I said, well, when are y'all going to play? And where? They told me. So when he got to the golf course that day, I was there waiting for them. And it became a tremendous tool. It is the way that I have been able to establish bipartisan relationships in what is a very, very, as you know, caustic environment these days. And I was so pleased when I was able to do something that I thought needed to be done. I often play out at Fort Jackson. And I noticed that every time I would go out to Fort Jackson, 36 holes of golf, I would never see any young people. All the children were on the softball fields or the basketball court, but I never saw any young people on the golf courses. And of course, I decided that there was something wrong with having first tee programs downtown when all of these students out at Fort Jackson these children whose parents were deployed in various places around the world, and yet they were not playing golf. So I decided that I was going to put in a little amendment to the Defense Appropriations Bill to earmark monies for first tee on military installations. Many of you may recall that was not a pleasant debate that afternoon. But I went to the floor and was given the mic. I defended what I had done. I refused to let it be taken out. It stayed in, and today more than 100 first tee programs are on military installations. Now, why did I do that? Why was I so adamant about that? When I was a young administrator in my 20s, I became director of a program called the Neighborhood Youth Corps. And one day I was trying to figure out how to make that program a good program. And I came across a poem. And the poem is entitled, "Children Live What They Learn." And it had a remarkable impact on me. And I think that most of you will agree that no matter who you may think you are, no matter who anybody else may think you are, the fact of the matter is we can be no more or no less than what our experiences allow us to be. That's what you are. And our children are not going to be good adults unless they have good experiences. And that's what First Tee meant to me. If you've got these core principles and people learn to live by them, I believe that no matter what may happen, at some point in your life, those experiences will come back to you. I was born and raised in the parsonage. And my dad and I used to talk as I was growing up. I really thought I was going to follow him into the ministry, and he thought that I was going to also. And we just assumed that's what it was going to be until my third year at South Carolina State. I was getting out of jail for the third time. And I was figuring that this ain't working too well. So I went home to tell my dad that I had changed my mind. I thought that I was going to go in a different direction. Now, those of you who are familiar with South Carolina, you know that Orangeburg is only about an hour and 15-minute drive from Sumter, where I grew up. It took me about 3 hours that day to make that trip, because I was very anxious about telling my dad what I had decided. When I got home and built up enough nerve to go in to talk to him, he was out back in the garden. And I went out to him and I told him that I had come to tell him that I was not going to go to the seminary. He paused for a few seconds, seemed like eternity. And then he said these words to me. "Well, son," he said, "I suspect the world would much rather see a sermon than to hear one." That had an impact on me unlike anything that I have ever experienced before or since. And I try to make sure that in my work in the Congress, in my work outside of the Congress. I try to make sure that the world will see a good and productive sermon in my work. That's why, long before I went to Congress, I saw golf, long before first tee, as being a tool by which we could give young people good experiences and help them further their educations. I started doing this little tournament. We call it the Pick Classic. It's now called the Rudolph Kanzeda Memorial Classic because Rudolph Kanzeda helped me get that started. And Lou, I was down there somewhere, used to come to it every year. And of course, someone asked me one day, why did you name this tournament after Kanzeda? Well, Kanzeda was a good athlete, loved golf. And one day, we were playing, the two of us were playing against two guys, and we were playing better ball. And we had gotten to the 17th hole. We were tied, and I had about a 4-foot putt. And I was trying to read that putt, and I couldn't quite read it. And I called Candy. I said, Candy, come and take a look at this putt and tell me what you think it's going to do. He stood behind me, looked over my shoulder, and then he stood up and walked away and looked back to me and said, I think that you're the reason the good Lord made partners. I learned something from that experience. We must partner up with our young people. Our young people are having challenges like they have never had before. We've got to partner up with them. And I can think of no better tool, no better way to teach real good principles than golf. It's a unique sport. Last year, because of that Rudolph Kanzeda Memorial Classic, we had 582 golfers to show up in the little town of Santee. We had a big banquet for 100 kids and their parents. And we hand out checks and computers totaling $420,000. And we've been doing that for a long time. And I came upon a lady not long ago who told me her daughter was one of the first ones to get a computer. And she's a medical doctor out in Los Angeles. She always believed that laptop that she got from us made all the difference in her success in school. And so I'm going to say to you tonight that we are going to be faced in the next few years by some serious challenges. Brother Black told me today that when he was out on the tour, there were 13 African Americans playing in the tour at the time he was playing. And then he said to me today, there's only 2. Now, I'm not too sure it's 2. Because Jill Bramlett was playing the Nationwide today. And so I'm not too sure it's only 1. Now, that's a trend we got to reverse. We got to reverse that trend. We must understand that if we don't intercede now to reverse some of the trends, we are going to relive some experiences that all of us thought were behind us. I used to teach history. And I want you to know, as George Santayana once said, if you fail to learn the lessons of your history, you are bound to repeat them. I remember from my studies when the legislature in South Carolina was 2/3 African American. I remember from my studies, the lieutenant governor of South Carolina was black, the secretary of state was black, the state treasurer was black. And by 1901, all of that went away. And so I'm saying to you tonight, let us think about the trends that we see developing. Let's think about what we can do to reverse those trends. And let's make sure that our young people understand that they will not always succeed every time they make the attempt. I remember when I was running my third time for office, I lost. And a friend of mine came up to me and said, well, now, what you going to do now? You just lost the third time. 3 strikes and you're out. I said to her, I said, you know, that's a baseball rule. And one should never live his or her life by baseball rules. You're never out. You're always in the game so long as the game is ongoing. And we must teach our young people that. I am real disturbed today at the number of young African Americans that seem to have given up. Golf, First Tee, are programs by which we can save some of these young people. Now, it's not going to be easy. We're going to have disagreements. And I want to close my comments here this evening by sharing with you a little story that I learned from my dad. Now, those of you who grew up in the city, you might not be able to relate to this. But when I was growing up, my dad had a 1937 Chevrolet. That Chevrolet was a real good car. You could run into a telegram pole, back up and keep going, wouldn't be a dent in it. But for some reason, that Chevrolet seemed to know when Saturday came. Because like every Saturday, he would stop running. And we would have to go down to Mr. Singleton and get him to work on that car. Now, Mr. Singleton was the neighborhood mechanic. Now, I know y'all can't relate to this, but this, you know, you can always tell the neighborhood mechanic he had a China bear tree in his yard with a pulley hanging out of it. I know y'all don't understand that. On this particular day, just as Mr. Singleton started to work on the car, he hooked that pulley up to the front of the car, and he started to raise it. And my 2 brothers and I started playing. And my dad told us, now, I don't want you to play near this car. I don't know how strong this chain is. It may pop. The car may fall on you. Go out across the field and play. So we did. We weren't gone long before we got into a little discussion. Now, some of you looking at it, you might call it a fight. It was not a fight. It was a physical discussion. And as we carried on that discussion, we didn't know, but my dad was watching us. And after a while, my dad thought we had extended that discussion long enough. He called us over to him. He was sitting on a little drink crate. And he lined the 3 of us up in front of me. He said, now, sons, he handed a little cord string to my brother Charles. Now, Charles, I want you to pop this string. Charles struggled, and he couldn't pop it. He then took it back and he gave it to John. He said, John, you're 2 years older and you're stronger. You pop the string. John struggled, he couldn't pop it. He then took it from John and gave it to me. He said, now, James, you're the oldest, you're the strongest, you pop the string. I struggled, I couldn't pop it. He then took the string back And he put it in the palms of his hands, and he began to rub his hands together. And the more he rubbed, the more friction he created. And the more friction he created, the more unraveled that cord string became. And before long, it was in 3 pieces. He gave 1 piece to Charles, 1 to John, and 1 to me, and said, now, sons, pop the strings. And with very little effort, all 3 of us popped the strings. He said, now I want this to be a lesson to you for as long as you live. Don't you let the little disagreements that crop up among you cause so much friction until it separates you. Because if you do, the world will pop you apart, and you may never know why. I want to say to us tonight, I know that we will always have disagreements. But let's not let these disagreements cause too much friction. We got a future that our children are looking forward to. We got a future that this country looks forward to. We must make sure that we do nothing to ruin that future for our children. Because if we do, they will forever pay us a serious price. Thank you all so much for letting me be a part of this program, and congratulations to each and every one of the honorees.